8. Monday, 11th of August, 2025. The road had changed its name as he entered Goulburn. The house had new owners, in the years since his grandmother had died. Parked across the road from the old home on Kinghorn Street, Locrian sat behind the wheel, lost in reverie. It was true that the new owners lived here, but the house itself stood unchanged. Still the dark brick of the walls, the pillars that held the front porch, the mailbox on a post knocked to a slight angle. That wasn't his nana's car in the driveway, of course, and like a stranger spotted reading your favourite book on the train, this felt like a backhanded insult, an invasion of privacy. Why couldn't he call this his home anymore? Why did another have any right to lay claim of what he'd had first? Notwithstanding others who would have owned the house before his grandmother did, this was an interrogation of the psyche. He could see it no other way. As long as it meant something to him, it would exist as his own. As long as he clung to the love that he had for his nan, she would endure in memory. How horrifying to realise a day would come when everybody who had ever known him would be gone. The house might still stand, the plot of land that bound it remain with the turning of the earth, but he reduced to a name in a book nobody would read, a grave nobody would visit, joined to his ancestry in the silence of death, blind to one another's presence in an eternal nothingness. The call of the void was spoken in whispers barely heard, and promised nothing that faith hoped for. He wondered where his memories went when he'd forgotten them. Locrian considered the frightening idea that he was now the oldest living member of his family. Not that many remained, he and his sister and her daughter. Would he cease to exist if nobody remembered him? He missed Leah on a sudden, as though she were a capstone to his very existence, and despite her imminent arrival, he needed a touchstone of reality to ground him from his turbulent nihilism. The house is exactly the same. The phone made a soft zooming tone as the message was sent, a quick photo taken too. He had no desire to draw attention from passers-by by suspiciously snapping pictures of a stranger's home. The key turned and the tyres crunched on the gravel. Lock. Yeah, Dad. It's about Nan. I know. She's gone, mate. I know. It was peaceful. Are you okay? What a stupid thing to have asked. Fine. I'm fine. Sad. His speech quickened. Leah's fine, but sad. And I love you, and I'll talk to you soon, my little son. His voice broke. Lockie could not recall the rest of the conversation. He remembered being struck by the moniker of Little Son, and could relive the numbness that he had felt upon receiving that call. Dad certainly had spoken to him again. Innumerable times in the 13 years between his and Nan's passing, but now he would never again. The logistics of a man's death could not have been more foreign to him. Though he was a mawkish man who considered mortality somewhat regularly, Locrian realised that he had not the faintest clue as to what happens when a person dies. A question many ask and none can answer is, where does the soul go when we exit this plane? Few stop to consider more prosaic questions of what to do with the body, now useless, the possessions, now homeless, the house, now shell. Assiduity would not make way for grief, dashing that snowdrift aside and pushing onwards. An old steam locomotive trundled along the line that skittered the east edge of town where the funeral home stood, itself a vestige of colonial Australia. It was modest in its opulence, a sandstone building adorned with timber veneer shutters and a corrugated iron awning. With few cars on the streets that Monday, the haunted bellow of the train, the smoke from its chimney, Locrian thought he might have stepped back in time. Wrestling with thoughts of an era lived and gone, he felt a tearful nostalgia for a life he never actually lived. The fit-out of the building was modern and stark. Walls were painted a dizzying white, synthetic plants either side of the reception desk, like a veritable funeral altar. The only thing missing was the coffin. He could have chuckled wryly at the sight of the dust that had collected on the stitched leaves of potted palms, Death dressed up as life. How ironic it all seemed. Locrian caught himself before descending into a vindictive sarcasm. More likely he was just trying to protect himself from the pangs of his broken heart. "Good morning," came the voice of the receptionist, who sat small behind a curved computer monitor. Hello, his voice stumbled. He realised he hadn't spoken to another person since the day before. "My dad is here, I think. His body, I mean." The woman smiled patiently. "Of course. Let me get someone along to assist you, Mr. Smith, with a Y." She left him alone in the room as he stared at the patch of sunlight on the floor, the only thing in the room that was brighter than the walls. He became aware of the jazz music playing softly from speakers in the ceiling corners and resolutely shook his head to ward off any intrusive thoughts. For a moment, he thought he saw the visage of a woman staring at him through the window, but realised that couldn't be the case. The patch of sunlight was perfectly shaped to the window's dimension and the sun's pitch. Lockie's loco. Stop thinking about trains. His mind was everywhere and nowhere at once. "Lachlan Smith?" He turned to face an older woman in a suit, hair pulled tightly in a bun. "Lockie is fine," he corrected. "Right, this way," she smiled. She led him down a hallway that wouldn't have looked out of place in a family home. The building must have been converted from a residence to a business. Floorboards creaked beneath their steps as they entered a room not dissimilar to the front reception, where the undertaker had set up a rather pleasant workspace. Dealing with death all day long. Probably best to make it as comfortable as possible. Or is this to make me more comfortable? Death dressed up as life. She tapped away at her computer for a moment, before turning to him with the same sugary smile plastered on the receptionist. "Right then, Mr. Smith. I'm Esther. I'm a funeral director here. How are you feeling today?" Pleasantries, understandable. "I'm okay. About as okay as I can be, I suppose." "Of course. Now, I always like to open by saying we're here for you in this difficult time, and deeply sorry for your loss. Thanks." "Thanks?" "And if there is anything specific you need along the way, please do let us know. I'll probably have plenty of questions. I don't really know what to do." "No troubles at all, Mr. Smith. Well, we believe we have your father here with us now. Now, I understand this can be a challenge, but we're just going to need a confirmation of identity before we can issue the death certificate." "Wow, you get a certificate? That's kind of funny." "Yes, perhaps not the type of certificate you might get at school, but yes." "So will this be like the movies? You take me to some cold refrigerator room and pull on the right drawer?" He hated himself for defending with humour, but could think of nothing else to say. How much small talk was acceptable at a time like this? Esther laughed. "No, not like the movies at all. We don't even need to leave this room. We like to make this as gentle as possible." She procured a cardboard folder from the filing cabinet and began leafing through it. "It was a neighbour, I believe, who contacted us. Your father lived alone?" "Yes, I can imagine so. I'm from Sydney, so didn't exactly see Dad every day." "Of course, I understand." She sat back down. "Now I have some photographs here. Our morticians take great pride in making the deceased look as natural as you might remember them, but of course this can be traumatic for some." "That's okay, it must be done." Esther slid a photograph face down on the desk towards him, and he gazed emptily at it for a moment. He already knew his father was dead, his house empty, his voice silenced. But to see him now, this would confirm it beyond a doubt. He hesitated. "Take your time," said Esther. He rubbed his hands up and down his thighs and breathed heavily. Was this the sort of thing where it was best to rip the band-aid off, so to speak? Just look at it and be done with it? He flipped the photo over and stared for a moment at the ceiling before looking back down. Whether it be a fatigue in his body that faltered his concentration, or an overload of emotion and function, he was unable to discern exactly what he was seeing for several seconds. It was a pallid face, the sallow cheeks and closed eyes that were somewhat sunken made Locrian feel like he was looking at a cheap imitation of his father. A poorly made mannequin that only slightly bared any resemblance to the strong man he'd looked up to. He slid the photo away from himself and gazed at the floor, hand on cheek. Esther patiently placed the photo back into the file and waited, holding the space while Lockie composed himself. "Is that your father, Charlotte Smith?" Locrian nodded. "Yes, it's him." "Okay then," Esther spoke softly. He felt he might have short-circuited, that his body would never move again, or would never want to move again. He just stared at the floor, his sight glazed over and out of focus. To do anything now just seemed pointless. "Mr. Smith, do you need a moment?" He cleared his throat. No, all good. What happens now?" "We will hold your father here while you and your family begin funeral preparations. Are you the executor of your father's will? Or do you know who is?" "No, my sister, actually. She was always more organised than me." He tried to laugh. "Very well. And is she local?" "No, South Australia. She'll be here in a day or so." "Okay. She will need to consult your father's will. You two might do that together." "Yeah, I need to get a look at it. We thought it might be at the house somewhere, but she'll know for certain. Either there or you can visit a public trust office. There's one in town you might go to, not far from here." "Thanks. I think there's a guy in Queanbeyan, some solicitor guy I need to see. I might wait till my sister arrives." "It will be important to learn whether your father had any specific requests. As you might already know, some people choose to be buried, some cremated." Locrian winced on a sudden and cleared his throat again. His breathing became raspy and his eyes stung with tears. A tension crept up the back of his neck, and he felt as though his heart was being squeezed by an unseen fist. "Take your time, Mr. Smith." Sorry, no cremation, no." "My apologies. Try not to fret. We're here to help you every step of the way." He nodded. "We will make sure we honour your father's wishes." He nodded. "And that your family is assisted to the best of our ability." He nodded. He began to disassociate with the room, the white walls, the fake plants. If he just kept nodding and agreeing, this would be over soon.